Here we go. Hi, this is Tom from the Ketogenic Fasting Project, and today I have my special guests are the Nusky family. So I know Krissy Nusky from Carnivore Family on Facebook, and she was telling me about her family story, and so we managed to pull together a little video here so they can share their story with everybody else. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves real quick?
Sure. I'm Krissy Nusky.
I'm Brook. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Chris.
Well, I'm glad you guys are here. So we'll get started with the questions. What prompted your family to change their diet?
Well, I think there was a number of reasons. I have fibromyalgia. I have some autoimmune issues. Chris, he needed to lose some weight, and my son Brandon has Tourette syndrome.
So tell us, what is it like having a family member with Tourette syndrome?
Well, for us as a family, obviously, it's not as hard as being the person who's actually suffering with Tourette's. But Tourette's, it's a neurological condition, and what it does is it causes physical and vocal tics. And most people who have Tourette syndrome will have also ADHD as well as OCD. And just like with other conditions, like we talked about with autism, there's some people that have it worse than others, different spectrums. Brandon's was pretty bad. He started off with blinking when he was really little, but at 5 years old, his whole jaw would jerk, his shoulders would tick, his hips would roll. He did some throat clearing. He whistled a lot. He would spit uncontrollably, and we tried lots of different treatments. We spent a lot of money. I think also OCD is one of the most debilitating things. It causes things like intrusive thoughts. Brandon's OCD is like a symmetrical OCD where it's or what we call an evenness issue. You touch one shoulder and then you have to touch the other shoulder. It was so bad that we would go for a hike and a leaf would touch his leg and he'd have to turn back around so that he could touch the other side. Or we'd be walking along on the sidewalk, and if his foot touched a crack wrong, we'd have to turn around and he'd have to touch it with the other foot just to make it, feel right to him. And then also, I don't want to forget about Brook, my daughter. She's healthy, no issues, but she was dealing with her brother acting out. We had lots of doctor's visits, and we spent a lot of time dealing with Brandon's condition, so I'm sure she probably felt neglected from time to time. But I think the breaking point for us was the emotional issues that came with Tourette's. Brandon would get super angry, and then he would cry. He would say he hated himself and he wanted to die. At one point, we're not going to go into detail, but basically Brandon thought that he would be better off without us. And so we all just had a breakdown, and we took him to the pediatrician. And we are so blessed to have found a pediatrician who specializes in Tourette's. And he told me, he said, there's this diet that you can do, but it's really difficult, and a lot of parents won't stick with it. So I actually looked at the doctor in the eye and I said, well, I would fly to the moon and back for my son. So if I have to, not eat certain foods or change the way we eat, I'm game. Let's do this. So he got excited, and he was telling me all the details about ketone production and BDNF in the brain, and all this stuff went over my head at the time. Later on, I learned, but I had so much respect for him because he was so compassionate, helping Brandon through all these really tough times. And what I didn't know is that this doctor, Dr. Weatherington, he actually practices keto himself. And so that was kind of the start of our journey with Tourette's in keto. But Brandon, would you like to tell us maybe how Tourette's makes you feel?
Well, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's like you try to hold.
You're trying to hold it in?
You're trying to hold it in, and it just sometimes it's painful and it's annoying and stressful, and sometimes it's like a sneeze, like you have to do it. It won't let you not do that, and sometimes it just made me feel crazy all the time, and I had really bad evenness or OCD, and it's really hard because it takes over your mind, and no one really understands how stressful it is for you.
So,
Yeah.
how does being in ketosis make you feel, Brandon?
I can tell when I'm not in ketosis. I feel crazy, I feel horrible, I'm tired and angry, and when I eat enough fat, I'm happy and I have energy. I can focus on stuff and I don't hardly tick at all, but I still have OCD, but it's not as bad.
Yeah, and we can tell too. We've experimented with different things, like we've tried adding in watermelon and Halo Top ice cream, and his whole body would start to tick and he would start acting out. But another interesting thing is since he's been in ketosis, he has 0 signs of ADHD now.
Have you ever made your own ice cream at home?
Yes, we have. But I will say that the one ice cream he can handle is called Rebel ice cream. I don't know if you've ever tried it before. It's not Carnivore.
Oh, I'll have to look for that. Rebel, huh?
It is called Rebel ice cream, and or Rebel Creamery. It's really good, and he actually is able to handle it. Unlike Halo Top, his whole body started ticking.
Yeah, I occasionally make ice cream out of just heavy whipping cream. So, and I've experimented a little with like the xylitol or the erythritol. I had a couple articles I read. People said a mix of erythritol and xylitol is like perfect. So, and it usually comes out pretty good. But I recently started a new weightlifting program, and the coach recommended a protein powder, and I haven't used a protein powder probably in 10 years. And the one I have is a whey isolate, and it tastes really good, suspiciously good considering it. But I thought about throwing a little of that in to make some ice cream. So,
yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, I've put MCT oil in ice cream before too. Even a little bit of coconut oil when I was first starting keto. You got to get that right mixture so it doesn't get too hard. You got to throw a little something in there so it doesn't freeze solid on you.
We would love to have one of those air compressor ice cream machines if we ever wanted to invest the money, but
yeah, my buddy just got a really fancy ice cream maker. I think it was $300-400, he said, and it didn't work very well. He went back to the one I use, where you just put that tub in the freezer, and then you pour your mixture in, and I've had pretty good luck with that. So
we have one of those, but we never have enough room in the freezer because we have too much meat in there.
A little too much meat in there, maybe, huh?
Well, never too much meat, but
All right. So let's see. How have other people reacted to your family's changes?
Well, we have a very supportive family. I do think that there was a lot of people at first who felt like we were withholding things from our kids, especially my daughter, since she didn't have health issues. So people were trying to give her beans and tortillas and, just trying to take her for ice cream and stuff because they thought we were holding things back from them. But both kids actually, right before starting keto, were considered overweight. And we went to the nurse practitioner for their yearly visit. And so she told me, she's like, your kids are starting to be overweight. She's like, so what I want you to do is I want you to switch from vitamin D milk to 2% milk. And, that worked out really, really well. But when we did keto, Brandon started out at 80 pounds because he was just able to get into his booster seat. And within 2 months, he was 58 pounds. So his body just cut the weight. And what's funny is he was eating like keto desserts and stuff almost every day. So for kids, the weight just drops off. So
yeah, they could burn all that fat.
I know.
Every time I see kids bouncing around, I go, God, do we all have that much energy back then?
At one time we did, I guess.
So, well, what other diets did you try besides keto or before keto?
I'm the one to talk to for that because I've tried everything.
Yeah.
Every road you can think of, really. I've been on Weight Watchers before. I did Herbalife for a while and did pretty good on that for a while, 6 months or so. I was on Medifast for a while, HCG. I took those shots before. That didn't really help me at all. But every time I went on one of those, it ended up that got to a certain point and I would stall, and then I would just start climbing right back up. It never failed. Didn't take long at all, and I started climbing. My weight just started going right back to where it was, or even higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like with Herbalife, you were 70 pounds, you lost 70 pounds, but then you put on 100. Like it just didn't make any sense.
I have a lot of similar experiences myself.
Yeah, well, I think that has to do with calorie restriction. It's so hard to get that out of our brains. But we did gluten-free for a while. Then we did paleo. I feel like those diets kind of helped me with my fibromyalgia. But an experience I had is I work in surgery, and my pain was so bad. And the thing about fibromyalgia is the pain is so bad, it also makes you weak and tired. And I was trying to cut with my left hand, trying to cut some suture. And it hurt so bad I couldn't even cut with my left hand. And I just knew, I was like, I'm going to be disabled from this. I am not going to let this happen. I'm going to try everything I can. So we really were looking for, even before Brandon even had his Tourette's issue, we'd always, Chris and I we've been married 18 years, and we've probably been on a diet 99.9% of that time. And so we did end up, when Brandon's Tourette's was bad, we ended up seeing a few Netflix documentaries, you know, the vegan propaganda ones that tell you that bacon's like smoking cigarettes. You know which ones I'm talking about? And so we were like, all right, well, we're buying all organic vegetables, and we're juicing, and we bought a juicer, and we spent thousands of dollars on stupid vegetables, and we were all miserable. We did not like it. I think the only thing that you guys liked was the black bean burgers from Costco, and I'm not even sure you really liked it, but it was better than everything else we were eating. But one of the interesting things about that, we didn't really correlate this till later on. Around that same time that we were juicing and trying to be vegan, Chris and I, we never dealt with depression, ever. We never fight, we never have issues like that. But we both started to have depression. We thought it was just maybe the stress with Brandon's issues and stuff going on. But we went to the doctor, and she tried to put us on medication and stuff. And then Brandon too, that's around the same time he had his meltdown. So thank goodness his doctor recommended keto, or we would probably still all be on medication.
Yeah, amen to that. You know, you're talking about the fibromyalgia and the pain. I had arthritis really bad, was my worst symptom originally. I went from going to the gym 5 days a week to getting out of bed at night and being able to grab the doorknob and get out of my own bedroom. All of a sudden, you know, I had hand pain, foot pain, back pain, neck pain, just crippling, you know.
And now you're back at the gym?
Yeah, I'm back to the gym now and lifting regularly. I have no joint pain whatsoever. I had psoriasis really bad. I used to bleed through my clothes regularly because I'd have lesions all over the place, and then I'd get secondary infections in the lesions. It was miserable, and nobody ever once suggested that this was dietary. You know,
right?
Like,
you want to give you medicine,
take some steroids, take some painkillers, and of course, all the oral pain medications they gave me just made the psoriasis worse, which I figured out when I read the labels. It says right in the labels, you know, may make psoriasis worse, may cause psoriasis. It's like, really?
That's awful. Yeah, I work in healthcare, and I would, when I was a medical assistant, I used to, you know, people would tell me they had fibromyalgia, and I'll be honest with you, I kind of just dismissed it, didn't really think anything of it.
Yeah.
But then when I got it, I did not realize how bad it was. Like when Brook was little, her hair touched my shoulder, and that just, whatever, that tiny bit of pressure just hurt deep into my arm. And it's like, you just don't understand those things until you actually experience them.
All right. So you guys, you've been keto for a while, and it's really changed everything?
Yep. We've been a little bit over 2 years now.
A little over 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you've gone kind of meat heavy at this point?
Yeah. What would you say, about a year?
Yeah, close to it.
Yeah. We're not dogmatic about diet, so I wouldn't push this way on anybody. But we did, the reason why we went to meat-based is because we have experimented with lots of different foods. You know, we tried flaxseed and hemp seed and every other little thing that exists, and we know how our body responds. Brandon knows how his body responds. It's funny because Brandon will tell us, he'll be like, I need some meat, or I need some fat. It's like he's so in tune with his body and how it feels in his brain to eat meat and to eat fat, that he'll tell us that's what I need to feel better.
Yeah, maybe that's where kids have an advantage. They haven't lived long enough to have all these other crazy ideas planted in their head, you know.
That's true. That's true.
Carrots or some spinach or something because you don't feel good, or nutrition, you know. So describe some typical meals for your family.
Well, what I did is I got my kids involved right away. I let them get involved in the meal planning and the cooking. We got on Pinterest, and I let them pick out and experiment with foods that they wanted to eat. Brook, who doesn't have any health issues at first, she really did give us a hard time. But now that she's off carbs, she feels so much better, and she is like an amazing cook and amazing keto baker. I work night shift, and I'll wake up a lot of times and she's got some amazing keto dessert ready for me, which is awesome, but it doesn't really help with my weight issues, but whatever.
Never hurts to spoil mom.
What's your favorite keto foods, Brooke?
Probably the cookies.
Oh, yeah.
Or raspberry fat bombs.
Raspberry fat bombs, you like those? Chris, what's your favorite?
Favorite food? I love steak, of course. I usually put bacon crumbles. I love to put some butter sometimes. I really like, and I enjoy eggs as well, even with steak. Bacon.
You're making me hungry.
Yeah. I like to make a keto like pizza. We just make we started out just making toppings where we would just melt cheese in the oven under broil, and we put different toppings on it, and that turns out real well. It gives you that pizza craving, or takes care of that. But we've been found a recipe for waffles that we've been eating, like, you know, it's made with eggs and a little tiny bit of cheese in it. And so it's kind of a carnivore waffle. We put pizza toppings on top of that, and it'll kind of cover it for us. But really, Krissy makes a great cheesecake sometimes.
Unfortunately, it's too good.
Every once in a while we have that, but mostly it's beef, some sort of ground beef, bacon, and some eggs most of the time.
Brandon, what about you?
Well, I love meat.
He does love meat.
And I also like berries, keto ice cream, like the Rebel, and I love butter bob chili.
Butter bob chili.
And keto waffles.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what is the butter bob chili?
So if you haven't looked up Butter Bob on YouTube, he was keto before it was cool, and he left the scene because he didn't want to be very popular. But it's basically, I make it more of a not completely carnivore, but it's sausage and beef together. That makes it really, really good. And then it has, I think, tomato paste in it, but pork sausage and beef broth in it. So he adds peppers and onions, but we don't put the peppers in it.
Gotcha. Very nice.
And then also, I think we talked about it a little bit. You talked about MCT oil and protein powder. That's something that Brandon gets every single day. He gets a little protein shake or hot tea, and we put MCT oil in it. That MCT oil really gives him a brain boost. And what's interesting, if you're doing more carnivore, I learned that goat cheese is actually high in MCT. So Brandon does like goat cheese. Sometimes he'll put it on top of his pizza if you can't do the coconut oil.
Yeah, I just bought some goat cheese yesterday morning. I just read that. I had no idea that there was a link between MCT oil and goat cheese. I guess, you know, any source of fat, it could potentially have the MCT oil in it. But it's funny that you brought that up. I just bought some yesterday. I haven't even opened it yet. So
it's good on pizza. Put it on top of other cheese and meats. It's really good.
I like that really sharp taste of the goat cheese. I bought some sheep cheese in Wisconsin a year or two ago that I could only eat a tiny little bit at a time because it was strong. Holy cow.
It's funny because before keto, when like you go to Subway and they say, what kind of cheese you want? I'll be like, I don't care, cheese is cheese. But now that we're keto, and I can't believe how much I notice the difference in cheeses. Like there's places we won't even buy cheese because it's like, ew, that tastes gross.
Yeah, I can't eat the regular cheeses anymore because it clearly triggers my psoriasis. So
do you find that with shredded cheese, pre-shredded cheese?
I haven't had any in a number of months now. just for trying to get this right. I was on I don't know if you've heard of the PKD diet, Paleo Ketogenic Diet.
Mm-hmm.
I was on that for a number of months, where I actually consulted with the folks in Hungary at the Paleo Medicina. It's an all carnivore diet, but I consulted them because psoriasis was really holding me up, and I couldn't quite get rid of it. But I had to cut out all eggs and all the cheeses and stuff like that for a while. And now I'm eating eggs again, and they don't seem to aggravate it. But I noticed, like, if I buy like a regular cheddar cheese or something like that, it clearly seems to cause a flare up. But if I eat like Parmesan, and I think it's because of the casein levels. So typically, like your Parmesan cheeses, the microbes have digested the casein, and so there's very little left. So I can probably get away with a little bit of that as like a seasoning or something. But it's all speculation at this point, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. We're always experimenting.
That, you know, and I'm a big fan of experimenting. You know, I think that's how people really have to figure this out, because it's going to vary from person to person. You know, where we're all different. I mean, the four of you are a good example. You know, it's like y'all address one thing or another, or one of you didn't have anything you even wanted to didn't need to address anything, but somehow you resolved things on a very similar diet. So
yeah, we found when we're talking about cheeses, we found that pre-shredded cheese seems to halt us. And so Chris got for our KitchenAid, they make like a little cheese shredder. Oh, that makes the best cheese. But I think what it is they put, supposedly it's sawdust and other things they put in to thicken and to keep it separated.
Yeah, so it doesn't stick together. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they put a little gluten on there or something.
Probably. I mean, if it's sawdust, that can't be good for you.
Yeah, a lot of times is particularly like Parmesan, because real Parmesan has to come from a certain region in Italy. It's very expensive, and it's often adulterated with things like sawdust, because it keeps it from clumping and nobody can really tell.
It's really sad what they put in our food.
Yeah. All right. So where were we? Have you guys had many differences in your activity level now that you changed your diet?
Yeah, I've been a lot more active. I know before I would be tired coming home from work, and now I come home and I want to exercise bike that I'll ride on it when the weather's bad. We got almost all of us got new bikes within the last year, so we're bike riding. We're always hiking. We just came back from 3 days in the Great Smoky Mountains where we backpacked. What we do, like 24 miles, I think.
Up a mountain and down a mountain.
They let me hear about it by the end of the third day.
It was worth it.
It was worth it. Yeah, the views on top were beautiful. We were worn out, but we felt great. If we would have done that 2 or 3 years ago, we probably would have been still in the woods.
But not just that, but the food situation was so much easier being keto, because we just had like tuna packets and we had some nut butters and stuff like that, just easy.
And so our weight was a lot less that we carried.
We didn't eat breakfast.
So, we didn't eat. We just had coffee with a little MCT oil and coconut oil we put in it on that trip, just because it was something we could carry with us.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't used a lot of MCT oil recently, but I really did enjoy it. I've probably a similar experience to Brandon there, where it really seemed to enhance cognitive function, kind of help me wake up like nothing else. Of course, I've been fat adapted for a while now, and perhaps, you know, I'm metabolizing my own body fat a little faster now too, so maybe that helps. He probably doesn't have near as much as I do to burn off. So, but I'm with you on that, you know, and it's you don't need that much. Well, you can't really have that much at one time anyway. So.
Yeah.
I tried the powdered MCT oil.
We actually took some with us backpacking.
That's what we took, because it would be lighter to carry with us. Just something to give us some energy in the first thing in the morning, really.
Yeah, it's good for stuff like that. It's kind of forbidden in some carnivore circles.
Yeah.
You know,
Right. That's why I said we're not dogmatic because we can't be 100%.
We'll just pretend it's goat sourced, right?
Yeah. Tell them to go eat some goat cheese in the morning.
All right. So what tips do you have for to help family members change their eating and lifestyle?
I would definitely say do your research. I feel like so many people, and you probably get this all the time, they want you to do the research for them. Mm-hmm. But people need to do their own research. And then as far as getting your family to eat keto, if your kids try to fight you, which Brook did a little bit at first, teach them why. If they know why they're supposed to eat a certain way, they're going to do it on their own. We watched some documentaries. I recommend Magic Pill on Netflix, Carb Loaded, and That Sugar film is hilarious. And there's this film by the Charlie Foundation that has Meryl Streep in it. You can watch it for free on YouTube. It's called First Do No Harm. Story about a mom who was helping her son get treatment for epilepsy. But even if you don't watch that movie, at the very end of the movie, it has real life people that had severe epilepsy, and they did the ketogenic diet for only 2 years. Mm-hmm. And what just blows my mind is these people, they did keto for 2 years, but then went back to a regular diet.
Yeah.
And still were seizure free. I mean, that just blows me away that their brains were fixed like that. So I say do that. Talk to them about how the sugar industry or the food industry tries to trick your kids with advertising. We always call the candy aisle, what do we call that when we go through the checkout line? I forget what we call it, but
Valley of Temptation.
It's the devil's aisle. We try not to, don't get tricked by that.
Yeah.
Also, let them pick out meals. Let them cook with you. Brandon just got done cooking a steak, didn't you? He's learning to make his steak perfectly how he wants it.
All right.
And I also feel like, especially what I would love is that if people that have Tourette's or their kids have Tourette's, just look at what your kid is eating. It really does make a difference. See if it helps. Try keto. Maybe it's not for you, but just don't give up and keep trying different things and seeing what works, because believe it or not, nobody else is telling you this, but nutrition plays a huge role in your health.
I believe that. I'm going to try and remember to link all these films.
Oh, okay.
Show notes so people can watch them, because I'm dyslexic myself, so I'm a big believer in video. There's so much video content. I mean, obviously that's one of the reasons why I make these videos, because people who can't see can listen to the audio and get a lot out of it. And of course, people who can see, a lot of my videos don't have subtitles yet, but hopefully one day they will. So, people who are deaf can also benefit from them. So obviously there's a lot of people with a lot of different disabilities. And in fact, if you're autistic, one of the most common, what they call comorbid conditions are seizures. So a lot of people who are autistic have seizures, and a lot of them benefit obviously from the ketogenic diet. It's kind of its origins in the history books were for treating pediatric epilepsy before they had seizure control drugs.
I didn't know that about autism. That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's so much crossover. There's quite a bit of schizophrenia and stuff like that, but also people and autistic people typically have digestive issues, severe digestive issues, and they seem to be resolved by keto/carnivore, at least for many, many people, if they can make the leap. If they can let go of the carbs long enough, they tend to improve. So, well,
even if they're not able to go completely keto, I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but her husband, she was a neonatal nurse practitioner, and she helped her husband who had Alzheimer's with coconut oil and MCT oil. I don't know if you remember that experience. I can send it to you. But it'll just blow you away that he at first was not really able to stick to a ketogenic diet, but did the MCT oil and coconut oil. And she gave it to him throughout the day, and he had remarkable cognitive benefits. So, I mean, this helps any type of neurological condition. It really does.
Yeah, my father and his wife have friends that the husband had early onset Alzheimer's, He got it in his late 40s or something like that, pretty severe. And
Wow.
she did all her homework because she wasn't really getting anywhere with her doctors. And she put on a ketogenic diet, and then they used hyperbaric oxygen, and he recovered quite a bit. He's a whole full functioning adult. He has a few setbacks or whatever, but he went from nothing there to recovering to the point where he's a functional person again. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing.
It blows my mind.
Ketogenic diets are used for enhance certain cancer treatments. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the book Tripping Over the Truth.
I have heard of that. That is one of the books I have not read yet.
Yeah, it's I have a copy around here somewhere. Yeah, that one really gets into the cancer treatment and Otto Warburg's research on what they call the Warburg effect, where quite a few cancer cells can't metabolize ketones. So when you kind of starve them of sugar, which they typically use, they tend not to be able to grow, and they actually tend to sort of poison themselves with the oxidative stress generated from the fermentation that they use. They ferment sugar to generate ATP or energy rather than regular metabolism with oxygen, and they're not able to counteract their own oxidative stress. So they not only starve, but they kind of poison themselves. So it can be a very effective treatment for people who have cancer. So we see all these things: schizophrenia, Tourette's, autism, all sorts of things, and yet somehow they're all related in some unknown way, and people tend to benefit from high fat, high protein diets. And carbohydrates seem to be the confounder in a lot of it. I know in the autistic groups, there's a lot of studies that show that high A1C values in pregnant mothers doubles your chances of your child being autistic. So there's some sort of link there, but we don't know. Is it cause? Is it effect? Gestational diabetes is another trigger, but then there's a whole list of other triggers, environmental triggers that seem to.
Well, and they're just not considering nutrition. I work in labor and delivery, and what we give diabetics, whether they're prenatal or not, or postpartum, it'll just blow your mind. The sugar-free stuff that we have has maltodextrin in it, dextrose in it. I mean, it's just, we give them a whole cake for when a baby's born as diabetic, but they get a whole cake. I don't know why we do that. We do. People just don't take nutrition seriously. They really don't. They're just like, well, here's some insulin, here's some medicine, you'll be fine.
Yeah, we were talking in a group the other day about baby formula. Breast milk is very rich in saturated fat and very low in carbohydrate. But most baby formulas, if they have protein in it, it's a protein like soy, which arguably is not a good food. And then they tend to be very high in sugars.
Mm-hmm. We actually had a drug rep come into the hospital that was for formula. And she was talking about how they had to label something. It was a new label that they wanted to show us and explain it to us. She said, because this generation is a bunch of label readers. And I looked at her I was like, well, I'm a label reader. And she just laughed. And she's probably in her late 40s. And she was talking to another nurse who's in her late 40s. And they were laughing about how this generation is a bunch of label readers. Well, later on in the conversation, they're both talking about how their children have extremely severe, one of them has Ehlers-Danlos, the other one I believe was autistic, I can't remember for sure. But I was like, and you wonder why we're label readers. We are label readers because, everything that we're eating is poisoning us. And we especially don't want to poison our children when they're that little.
That's interesting. Yeah, Ehlers-Danlos or EDS is a really common disorder among autistic.
And you never heard of it before.
Right. Yeah. So I kind of had the opposite thing where my joints are really stiff. So I'm very inflexible. Even when I was a kid, my parents put me on the floor to play with blocks or something, and then I could never stand up again because my hips were so stiff. I've been that way my whole life. Now it's a lot better because I think part of it is the connective tissues are very stiff. Some people say it could be EDS and the overgrowth of the muscles that stabilize the joints actually creates the problem. But I may never know. But I never heard of it until I really started talking to a lot of other people with autism, adults with autism, and I hear about EDS quite a bit now. So
I feel like they're actually starting to diagnose it now. Somebody told me before too that a lot of people diagnosed with fibromyalgia actually have Ehlers-Danlos, and they just now are like transferring the name over. I never went and got tested for it because I don't need any more diagnoses. I don't want any more labels. I just want to be healthy and happy. That's all.
yeah, well, once you feel good, what's the point, right?
Yeah, who cares? That I was thinking, Chris, did you have anything you wanted to say about?
Like for research and so forth?
Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I would just recommend everyone doing the research. I'm helping a friend right now really get into it, and just told him to really look up some recipes, see what other people are doing, and send me pictures of what you're doing. I'll help you out. So he's eating hamburgers with just a little bit of cheese on them. I recommended different YouTube videos for him to watch. Some that were heavy on meat, and he's just getting started. So I think I have like Ken Berry and maybe Thomas DeLauer had some videos that I had sent him. So I mean, doing research is real good. I lost 100 pounds doing just keto, which I mean is great. And then I've stalled out now for the last year, so really I've gone more heavy into meat in the last year, which is really any other diet that I've had I would just gain weight right back. So for me, it's been a great, real blessing, really, that I've been able to hold steady even at my weight at the moment, and I'm sure the rest will come off, later on.
Yeah, dropping 100 pounds is no small feat.
No, and you're not on blood pressure medicine anymore.
I was pre-diabetic at one time before I started all this. That's what really pushed all of us to really do it at the same time, because all this stuff kind of hit all at once. I'm off all those medications that we were on.
He had some skin conditions too that him and his brother have called dermatographia. And when we went to the doctor one time, his doctor was like, "Let me write my initials in your arm like this." And she walked over and she showed the assistant. She's like, "Look," because it swelled up real big. Every time you like kind of scratch his hand and his skin, it would swell up.
Wow.
So, but it's weird. Yeah, I guess it's part of inflammation. But she said there's no treatment, but it doesn't bother him anymore.
You can't change all that and drop 100 pounds to keep it off unless your diet's sustainable.
Exactly.
I lost a bunch of weight on keto, and I told people what I did. They're like, "Oh, that diet is so difficult. It's so hard. Nobody can stay on it." And I was like, "What are you talking about? It's the easiest diet I've ever been on. It's a piece of cake,
When you're full, that's all that matters. When you start looking at food like nutrition instead of, and even with kids, like we got to stop looking at food like it's a reward. Like, I have to take the kids out for ice cream, or I have to, just look at food like nutrition. And if it keeps you full, then you'll be happy.
Yeah. And I'm with you on doing the homework. I talk about this with people frequently. It seems to be one of the keys is to inspire some curiosity in people. What can I do? And what will happen? What changes will I make? How much better will I feel? You can kind of feed that curiosity and keep people doing their homework, even reading labels. I'm always telling people, what? There's all these studies on sites like PubMed, and they may not make much sense in the beginning, but after you read a few of them, it's pretty easy to understand what they're saying. And in books, I got started. My friend told me, "Hey, I was talking to a guy, blah blah blah. He was ripped, he was muscular, and he told me something didn't make any sense. And I got this book, and it was by Gary Taubes. It said Why We Get Fat." And that was the first book I listened to. Whenever possible, I listen to books rather than read them. So I got it on Audible and listened to it. And I don't know, 50 books past that now because it's been a few years. So that one book made all the difference to me out of all the other books and articles and everything. That really started my journey. And you never know when you're going to share just the right thing with somebody that's going to change their life.
Yeah, I think for us, I've never been much of a reader my whole life, unfortunately. But now that I don't have the brain fog, I love to read. But The Obesity Code by Jason Fung, he, believe it or not, a lot of people just know him for fasting, but he really does promote and talks about insulin. I never really understood insulin, and that book is thick, but I read it and I just delved into it. I absolutely love that book.
Yeah, he has all kinds of lectures on YouTube as
For
well.
free.
All kinds of slideshows he did for little groups and stuff like that are pretty amazing. It's very powerful stuff. So yeah, obviously if you got access to YouTube, there's so much information out there to help people. And there's always my podcast. So
Yeah, always watch it. Thomas Clark, watch his podcast. We recommend them highly.
Appreciate that. Now,
Randa, do you want to tell them anything that you wanted people to know?
Well, I want people with Tourette syndrome to feel how good I feel, and I want them to know how much that makes your brain feel, and that our brain needs fatty meat. And I think people with Tourette syndrome should at least try it.
excellent. That's a very good message.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that'll help.
He's not the same boy that was here 2 years ago. It was awful. He couldn't sit still. He was tired all the time. He was, an emotional mess, and it was just hard on everybody. And now he's just
there's a video on the article.
Yeah.
Show the difference, really, what it came from.
Yeah. So the Diet Doctor article, I actually sent a little clip. Throughout his time with Tourette's, I'd always videotape all his little tics that he had, and I just made like a compilation for the neurologist so that he could see all the different tics he had. And that's just the stuff you could see. That doesn't even count all the stuff going on in his mind and his brain that he's suffering with.
Right. Yeah, I actually have 2 adult friends that have Tourette's. One of them just has the throat clearing kind of response. The other one, she was in a wheelchair for a number of years because they had her on so many medications that she just wasn't functioning, or she couldn't walk. She could barely talk. And she's recovered from that mostly now, but the medication actually ruined her eyesight. So she can't even drive because her eyesight's so poor, even with glasses. So just amazing what kind of bad things can happen when the pharmaceuticals are involved and people don't even have an opportunity to try just changing their diet to see if it works.
People just don't realize how much it helps. I know in the Tourette support groups that I'm in, I've thought about leaving them a couple times just because it's so depressing, because these people, they try everything, but they're just refusing to try nutrition. Or they'll say, well, I did gluten-free and it didn't work. And I'm like, this isn't gluten-free. There's something about the ketones that you need to have to feel better. And it's like, it depresses me that they don't even try to, try any kind of diet, really. They want to just take medicine. Some of the medicines for Tourette's, they cause breast growth in boys. They cause suicidal thoughts and thinking. With Brandon, one of the medications he was on, he's the nicest, sweetest boy, but he got so angry, he punched a wall. Like, he got angry. He wanted to punch Chris. And that's just not him, but it was the medication, and that's a common side effect of it.
Sure. Yeah, I've been thrown out of every single psoriasis group I used to belong to because it suggests diet. It's heresy just to suggest that there's a cure.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I've had people send me private messages on Facebook that says, take this concoction. It only costs $500 and something a month, and it will cure your Tourette's. And it's like, unfortunately, we've been down that path too, and that doesn't work. Yeah. But you change your nutrition? Come on, it's not hard.
Yeah, I know a lot of people have a really strong knee-jerk reaction to just trying to change their diet. It's like a personal insult if you just suggest that maybe if you ate different food, you might feel better. So.
But they don't care if you're eating Doritos and M&Ms and your kid's drinking pop. That's fine. But my kid's eating keto. Whoa, something's wrong there.
Yeah, I don't know. We've been brainwashed. I know. I'm 48 now, so I grew up with the food pyramid and the My Plate and these concepts like eat a balanced diet. And you eat a balanced diet, but then you look at the recommendation. It's not like there's equal portions of anything on there. So what is balance? Eat healthy. What is that? They're all just kind of empty concepts that mean something different to everybody.
True.
So, Well, it's been a wonderful chat with you folks. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add?
We thank you. We appreciate it very much.
Yeah, thanks.
I appreciate you guys getting together and taking the time and preparing for this, because it really, I think it's going to be fantastic. I think a lot of people over time are going to watch it, and I think a lot of people will be helped by it. So, and maybe
more families, whole families doing keto. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, it works best when I can do that. So, all right. Well, thanks again,
Thank you.
Thanks.
and I'll see you guys online for sure.
Yep. See ya.
Bye.
Bye.